Betrayed. Broken, reborn. This is Novel Binge.
I played the heir for 6 years. When the real one woke up, he told me to run for 6 years. I wore another man's name, ran his family's empire, and lived as the Shen family's perfect heir. The day the real Shen Yanxi finally opened his eyes, I thought he would tell me to get out. Instead, he grabbed my sleeve and whispered, one word, run. When Shen Yanxi woke up, I was in the middle of a board meeting. My phone rang. The number flashing across the screen belonged to the private convalescent center. I stopped turning the pages in front of me. More than 20 pairs of eyes in the conference room fixed on my face. At the far end of the long table, Shen Huizhang tapped one finger lazily against the tabletop. President Shen, he said, smiling, without warmth, surely you can give us a final answer today on whether you'll sign off on the Blue Bay project. I ignored him and answered the call. The voice on the other end was very low. President Shen, the young master has awakened. The conference room fell silent. Everyone there knew who I was, and everyone knew I was not Shen Yanxi. 6 years ago, Shen Yanxi, the true heir of the Shen family, was left in a vegetative state after a car accident. For 7 straight days, Shen Corporation's stock price plunged. The board fractured. Collateral branches of the family began fighting for control, and the empire old master Shen had built nearly collapsed overnight. Then, Mrs. Shen, Meng Qinglan, brought me out of the orphanage. I looked like Shen Yanxi, too much like him. Once I wore his clothes, cut my hair like his, copied his handwriting, and learned to speak at his pace. Even old Master Shen had stared at me for a long time without saying a word. 6 months later, the Shen family released an official statement. Shen Yanxi had recovered, and that was how I became Shen Yanxi. From 17 to 24, 6 full years. I ended the call and closed the file in front of me. The meeting is adjourned. Shen Huizhang gave a soft laugh. Now that the real young master is awake, the fake one can't sit still. I looked at him. He lifted his teacup, contempt plain in his eyes. Don't look at me like that. It's a happy occasion, isn't it? I said nothing. I picked up my coat and walked out. Just before the door closed behind me, I heard him add, almost casually, you've borrowed that skin for 6 years. It's time to give it back. I did not stop. The hallway outside the conference room seemed endless. My assistant followed a step behind me and asked softly, President Shen, should we inform Madam? No. I pressed the elevator button. My fingertips were cold. I had always known this day would come, but when it finally did, it still felt as if someone had reached into my chest and closed a fist around my heart. Shen Yanxi was awake. Then, who was I? The convalescent center stood on the eastern outskirts of Linhai. White walls, black iron gates, a building so clean that the smell of disinfectant could not quite cover the damp, stale scent of medicine. The car had barely stopped when Xu Linchuan, Shen Yanxi's attending physician, was already waiting at the entrance. He was in his 40s, with gold-rimmed glasses and a carefully measured smile. President Shen, you arrived quickly. I walked past him. Where is he? He has just regained consciousness, and his condition is still unstable. It would be best not to agitate him. I stopped. I asked where he is. Xu Linchuan paused for half a second, then stepped aside. 2 bodyguards were stationed outside the ward. I pushed the door open and went in. The man on the bed was terribly thin. The back of his hand was pale and faintly blue. His wrist bones jutted out beneath the skin, and wires from the monitor were attached to him. His eyes were closed. His lashes trembled slightly. I stood beside the bed and looked at that face. For 6 years, I had looked into the mirror every morning. The face in the mirror was something the Shen family had shaped piece by piece with money, patience, and power. I had thought the resemblance was already close enough. Only now, seeing the real Shen Yanxi lying there, did I realize that some things could never be replaced by a copied face. His brows were colder, his lips were thinner. Even after 6 years of illness, there was still a trace of the Shen family's pride in his bones. I reached out, then stopped halfway. I did not know what to call him. Young Master, Shen Yanxi, or should a fake like me begin with? I'm sorry. The man on the bed suddenly opened his eyes. They were very dark. He stared at me for a long time. It was as if, after a long nightmare, he had seen the one person who should never have appeared. My throat moved. You're awake. His lips trembled. No sound came out. I leaned closer. What are you trying to say? The monitor beeped beside us. His fingers twitched, then tightened weakly around my sleeve. The strength was small, but, in that instant, cold sweat broke across my back. He stared straight into my eyes, as if afraid I would not hear him clearly. Hurry, I frowned. What? Run. The word was so faint, it almost drowned beneath the sound of the machine. But, I heard it. Run. I had thought the first thing he would say after waking up would be to tell me to leave, or ask who I was, or ask why I had lived under his name for 6 years. None of that. He told me to run. Footsteps sounded outside the door. Xu Linchuan led several people in. The moment he saw Shen Yanxi clutching my sleeve, his expression shifted for a second before returning to calm. President Shen, the patient has just awakened. His mind is confused. You must not take what he says seriously. I slowly straightened. A nurse stepped forward and pried Shen Yanxi's fingers off my sleeve. He was still looking at me. His eyes held anxiety, anger, and a fear I could not describe. Xu Linchuan stood by the bed. Madam is on her way. Please wait outside. I looked at him. He told me to run. Xu Linchuan smiled. Persecutory delusions are common in patients who have just regained consciousness. Is that so? I lowered my eyes and adjusted my cufflinks. Then send me the surveillance footage from earlier, along with his medical records. Xu Linchuan's smile faded. That requires Madam's consent. I raised my eyes. I am still the CEO of Shen Corporation. He did not answer. I turned and walked out. Before I left, I looked back at Shen Yanxi one last time. Someone was holding his hand down, yet his fingertips were tapping lightly against the edge of the bed. Once, twice, a pause, 3 times. I froze. 6 years ago, when the Shen family taught me how to imitate Shen Yanxi, they gave me countless old videos. In one of them, the teenage Shen Yanxi sat at a piano, tapping his fingers against the edge of the table in exactly that rhythm. It was the secret signal he and old Master Shen had used when he was a child. Danger. Meng Qingglan arrived half an hour later. She wore a white suit, her hair pinned low, and carried a thermos in her hand. When she saw me, she frowned. Why do you look so pale? Her tone was gentle, just as it had been every time over the past 6 years. I was 17 when I first entered the Shen family. It was the first time I had ever worn a dress shirt, and I buttoned it wrong. She bent down, fixed it for me, and whispered, "From now on, you are Yanxi. Don't be afraid." Back then, I believed her. I thought she had saved me. From the orphanage to the Shen residence, from Jiangyi to Shen Yanxi, she gave me new clothes, taught me how to use a knife and fork, hired tutors for me, and told me what I was allowed to say and whom I needed to guard against. She was the first person who gave me a home. She was also the first person who took away my name. I looked at the thermos in her hand. He's awake. I know. Meng Qingglan looked toward the ward, her eyes slightly red. Thank heaven. She said those 2 words very softly. It looked real. If Shen Yanxi had not told me to run, I might still have believed her. Then she turned back to me. Come home for dinner tonight. You've lost weight. I still have work at the office. Jiang Yi. My fingers went still. The cold white hallway light fell across her face. She was still, as gentle as ever, but she had called me Jiang Yi, not Yanxi, not a CI. I had not heard that name from her in a long time, so long that I almost forgot my surname was Jiang. Meng Qingglan stepped closer and smoothed the collar of my suit. Don't be difficult, especially not at a time like this. You need to do as you're told. I looked down at her hand. It was well cared for, the nails rounded and clean. 6 years ago, this same hand had taken me out of the orphanage. She had asked, "Do you want to go to school?" I said yes. She asked, "Do you want to live in a big house?" I said yes. Then she asked, "Do you want a home?" I did not answer. She only patted my head. Then come with me. So, I went with her. And after that, I never went back to being Jiang Yi. That evening, I returned to the Shen residence. The dishes on the dining table were all my favorites. More precisely, they were Shen Yanxi's favorites. Steamed fish, mushroom, soup, and blanched Chinese broccoli. I did not actually like fish. Too many bones. When I was little, the orphanage cafeteria occasionally served fish. Every time, I failed to pick out the bones properly, and one would get stuck in my throat. But Shen Yanxi loved fish, so I learned to love it, too. Meng Qingglan personally picked a piece of fish belly for me. Were you frightened today? I lowered my eyes and removed the bones from the fish. I'm fine. She sat across from me. It is a good thing that Yanxi woke up. Don't think too much. I smiled. How am I supposed not to? The dining room went quiet for a moment. Meng Qingglan picked up a napkin and wiped her hands. You are still the CEO of Shen Corporation, and you are still part of the Shen family. No one is trying to drive you away. What about him? He needs rest. How long will his recovery take? She looked at me. Jiang Yi, you're asking too many questions today. I swallowed the fish. It had no taste. She picked up a document from the side and pushed it toward me. The Blue Bay project and the overseas asset restructuring will be brought to the board tomorrow. Sign these first. I turned to the first page. Legal opinion. Authorization procedure. Risk disclosure. Beautifully written. So beautifully written that every trap was hidden between the lines. The project was controlled through an offshore shell company connected to the Shen family. Funds had passed through charitable foundations, medical investments, and logistics parks before finally flowing into Blue Bay Bay construction. If anything went wrong, the direct responsibility would fall on the signatory. The signature line was blank, waiting for me. I closed the file. I can't sign this. Meng Qinglan did not get angry. She only sighed. You've grown up these past few years. You're becoming more and more independent. Is that a compliment? It's a warning. She looked at me, disappointment faint in her eyes. Everything you have today was given to you by the Shen family. She had said that many times. The first time, I felt grateful. The second time, I felt afraid. Every time after that, it felt as if a noose were tightening around my neck. She continued, do not forget, if it weren't for me, you would still be in that orphanage. I held the pen. The tip hovered above the signature line for a long time. At last, I set it down. We'll discuss it at tomorrow's board meeting. Meng Qinglan looked at me. Jiang Yi. I stood up. Madam, rest early. Her expression finally turned cold. It was the first time in 6 years that I had called her madam. Shen Huijiang arrived early at the board meeting the next day. He was sitting near my seat, twirling a pen between his fingers. When he saw me come in, he smiled. President Shen, did you sleep poorly last night? I pulled out the chair at the head of the table and sat down. Second uncle, are you worried about me? Of course I am, he said, leaning back. Now that the real young master is awake, the fake one must be feeling uneasy. No one in the conference room spoke. I opened the file. Let's begin. Zhao Jingming gave the legal briefing first. He was the head of Shen Corporation's legal department and one of Meng Qinglan's people. He always spoke with flawless precision. The Blue Bay project has undergone 3 rounds of compliance review. At present, there are no significant legal risks. The overseas asset restructuring is in line with the group's strategic needs, so we recommend proceeding as soon as possible. Shen Huijiang followed at once. Since there's no risk, President Shen, why not sign? The document was pushed in front of me. Everyone watched. I picked up the pen. Shen Huijiang could no longer hide the smile tugging at his mouth. Just as the tip of the pen was about to touch the paper, Qin Jiao spoke. I do not recommend signing it now. I raised my eyes. She sat on the finance side in a black suit, her hair tied neatly behind her head. She was usually quiet, cold, and precise as an audit machine. Shen Huijiang frowned. Vice President Qin, what do you mean? Qin Jiao projected a report onto the screen. The source of the third bridge loan for the Blue Bay project is unclear. There are also irregular intercompany loans involving the margin accounts of several offshore shell companies. Zhao Jingming immediately said, an accounting concern is not the same as a legal risk. We cannot let a minor delay in bookkeeping affect the group's strategic decision. Qin Jiao did not even glance at him. The funding source is unclear. That is not a minor bookkeeping delay. Shen Huijiang's face darkened. President Shen, is this one of your people? I looked at Qin Jiao. She remained calm, as if she had not helped me at all and was merely reading a line of numbers. I set down the pen. Since finance has questions, we'll conduct a supplementary audit. Shen Huijiang laughed. A supplementary audit? What are you waiting for? Are you afraid to sign? The young master has just awakened. His inheritance status needs to be reconfirmed. Since Blue Bay involves overseas assets, we need additional medical documentation, board authorization, and an audit review. I pushed the document back. The procedure is incomplete. I won't sign. The conference room was so quiet I could hear the air conditioner running. Shen Huijiang stared at me. For once, he was not smiling. After a few seconds, he said in a low voice, do you really think you're Shen Yanxi? I said nothing. He stood and walked behind me. One hand rested on the back of my chair. It doesn't matter what surname you use. Deep down, you know what's in your bones. I closed my laptop. The meeting is adjourned. That evening, the orphanage called me. When I saw the number, my heart sank. Dean Han rarely contacted me first. She knew the Shen family disliked any connection between me and my past. The call connected. Her voice was hoarse. Xiao Yi. I stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling window. The lights of Linhai City were bright below me. Dean, what happened? She was quiet for several seconds. Nothing. I just wanted to ask how you've been. I did not answer. She would never have called, just for that. Sure, enough. The next moment, she could no longer hold back. The Shen Family Charitable Foundation stopped the payments. We're still short of money for Xiaobei's surgery, and the children's medicine is almost gone. My fingers tightened around the phone. When? This afternoon. Who told you? People from the foundation. They said it was a project review. She paused, then lowered her voice. Xiao Yi, don't fight the Shen family head on. You can't stand against them alone. I looked at my reflection in the glass. Suit, watch, CEO of Shen Corporation. So dignified, but with one casual order. They could uproot the little I had and leave it to burn under the sun. I'll find a way to get the money. Xiao Yi. Dean, I interrupted her. Are the files from when the Shen family took me away still there? The other end went silent. After a long while, she asked, "Why are you asking? I want to know exactly how I was taken from that place." Dean Han's breathing became uneven. "Xiao Yi, about what happened back then, are they still there?" She did not answer, but silence was already an answer. I hung up. Chen Bei stood by the door. He was my driver and bodyguard. The Shen family had assigned him to me. For years, he had rarely spoken, always standing there like a wall. I picked up my coat. "Prepare the car." Chen Bei looked at me. "Where are we going?" "The convalescent center. Madam said you should not go out tonight." I looked at him. "Are you listening to her, or to me?" Chen Bei was silent for 2 seconds, then lowered his eyes. "I'll follow your order." There were fewer people at the convalescent center at night. 2 bodyguards stood outside. Shen Yanxi's ward. My access card no longer opened the security door. Chen Bei stepped forward and blocked the camera. I glanced at him. He did not explain. I used a spare key to open the door and went inside. Shen Yanxi was awake. He looked weaker than the day before, but his eyes were clear. I walked to the bed. "Is there a problem with the Blue Bay project?" His lips moved. No sound came out. I held out my hand. "Write it." He grabbed my wrist. His fingertips were ice cold. Slowly, stroke by stroke, he wrote against my palm. "Blue Harbor, Shiti." I frowned. "Blue Harbor Warehouse." "No, Shiti." He stared at me, his eyes red with urgency. Then, he wrote again. "No, trust, Meng." The door suddenly swung open. Xu Linchuan led several people inside. His face, grim. "President Shen, who gave you permission to enter the patient's room without authorization?" Shen Yanxi gripped my hand with all his remaining strength. Xu Linchuan gave the nurse a look. The nurse stepped forward with a syringe. I blocked her. "What is that?" "A sedative. He is too agitated, and it will affect his recovery." Shen Yanxi stared at the syringe. Then, I understood. He was not afraid of me. He was afraid of them. I grabbed Xu Linchuan's wrist. "The patient has just regained consciousness. Any sedative dosage must be confirmed by his family and the medical committee." Xu Linchuan smiled. "Are you his family?" The ward fell silent. That sentence was sharper than anything Shen Huijiang had said to me. Was I? No. I was using his name, sitting in his seat, and living under his identity. But, in that moment, I did not even have the right to stop one injection. Xu Linchuan pulled his hand back. The needle pierced Shen Yanxi's arm. His eyes widened. Before his hand went slap, his fingers scraped once across my palm, as if begging me to remember. "Blue Harbor, Shiti." I went to Blue Harbor that same night. Blue Harbor was the old port district of Linhai. It had been prosperous more than 10 years ago, but after the new port was built, the area slowly fell into disuse. Warehouse. No. 17 stood at the very back. Halfway there, Chen Bei suddenly said, "There's a car behind us." I looked in the rearview mirror. A gray pickup had followed us for 3 streets. "Lose it." Chen Bei said nothing, and stepped on the gas. Rain poured down hard. Water blurred the windshield. As we turned onto the elevated ramp, the pickup suddenly accelerated and slammed into us from the rear side. There was a deafening crash. The car flipped. The airbag burst open. My ears rang. When I opened my eyes, my mouth was full of blood. Chen Bei was slumped over the steering wheel, blood running down his forehead. I forced open the twisted car door and crawled out. The pickup was already gone. Rain struck my face hard enough to hurt. I looked back at the car. The indicator light on the dashcam was off. I remembered clearly. It had still been on before we got in. Someone had already tampered with it. Leaning against the ruined car door, I stood there for a long time. Then, I laughed. Shen Yanxi had told me to run. Only now did I understand. He was not trying to drive me away. Someone really wanted me dead. When I woke up in the hospital, my phone had nearly exploded. The top trending topic was already everywhere. The Shen family's fake young master. The anonymous leak was detailed. Orphanage. Name change. Stand-in. Fake heir. They even posted the official photo from my orphanage file when I was 17. In the photo, I was thin. My hair was cropped, short, and my eyes looked cold and dirty. The comments were full of insults. Rich families are hiring stand-ins now. Is this a drama? So the Shen family has been run by an imposter for 6 years. The real young master woke up. No wonder the fake one panicked. Someone should investigate whether he tried to murder the real heir for money. I stared at the screen. The ward door opened. Meng Qinglan walked in. She still carried a thermos. As if nothing had happened the night before, she sat on the edge of the bed and tucked the blanket around me. "Are your injuries serious?" I did not answer. She picked up my phone and turned off the screen. "Don't look at that. Did you leak it?" She looked at me. "I'm not that foolish. Exposing this now does the Shen family no good." "Then who?" Huijiang. Her tone was calm. "But if you continue to disobey me, I may not be able to stop him." I smiled. so you're here to persuade me to be obedient. She placed a document on the bedside table. It was still the Blue Bay Project. Sign it. I'll handle the public opinion, and the orphanage funding will resume. I looked at her. What if I refuse? She reached out and touched my hair, the same gesture as 6 years ago. But this time, I did not lower my head. Her hand froze in midair. Zhang Yi, she said softly, don't force me to turn you back into what you really are. I looked at her. I suddenly remembered my first year in the Shen residence. One night, I could not sleep and hid at the top of the stairs. She found me and wrapped a blanket around my shoulders. She said, from now on, this is your home. I remembered that sentence for 6 years. Now that I thought about it, she had not been lying. This really had been my home, a dog's home. If I obeyed, I would get a bite to eat. If I disobeyed, I would be stripped back to my original form. After I was discharged, I did not return to the Shen residence. I went to the orphanage. The iron gate at Linhai Welfare Home was still the old one. Much of the paint had peeled away. When I was little, I often leaned against that gate and watched cars pass by. Back then, I thought anyone who could sit in those cars must be living a good life. Later, I finally got into one. Only then did I realize that once the car door closed, no matter how expensive the car was, it could still be a cage. Dean Han waited for me in her office. She had aged a great deal. The moment she saw me, tears filled her eyes. Xiaoyi, I sat down. Where is the file? She lowered her head and took a brown envelope from the drawer. The edges had yellowed. I opened it. It was not an adoption agreement, nor was it a standard sponsorship contract. The title read, Special Financial Assistance Recipient Evaluation Certificate, Subject of Observation, Zhang Yi, Reason, or Observation, Similar, Facial Features, Similar Bone Structure, High Adaptability. 3 signatures were at the bottom, Meng Qinglan, Zhao Jingmei, and another doctor named Gu Chengyi. I turned to the last page. A photo was tucked inside. At 17, I stood at the orphanage entrance in a school uniform, washed almost white. Meng Qinglan stood beside me. Zhao Jingming and the plastic surgeon stood not far away. On the back of the photo, someone had written one line, Preliminary Assessment, Usable, Usable. I stared at that word. A wave of nausea rose in my stomach. Dean Han burst into tears. I didn't know back then. I really thought the Shen family wanted to sponsor you. Mrs. Meng said she would send you to school and give you a good life. I put the document back into the envelope. Dean, do you know how I spent the last 6 years? She froze. I smiled faintly. I learned how to eat, how to walk, how to sign, how to speak like him. I had a fever of 39 degrees and still had to memorize Shen Yanxi's childhood awards. An old director once asked what kind of dog Shen Yanxi kept as a child. I answered, wrong, so I knelt in the ancestral hall all night. I thought that was the price of living well. I looked up at her. Now I know it wasn't. It was not a price. It was domestication. Dean Han covered her mouth and sobbed. I stood. I'll take the file. Xiaoyi, don't do anything reckless. I tucked the envelope under my arm. I won't. At the door, I stopped. Dean, from now on, don't call me President Shen. She stared at me. I said, my name is Zhang Yi. Qin Jiao waited for me in the underground parking garage. She leaned against the car with a folder in her hand. I walked over. Did you find anything? She nodded. The transferred nurse is Nurse Lin. She didn't resign. She was sent to a nursing home in another city. She'll be moved again tomorrow morning. I looked at her. Why are you helping me? Qin Jiao glanced at me. I'm not helping you. Then, what are you doing? I'm an auditor. I can't stand dirty books. She handed me the folder. The Blue Bay Project, the Convalescent Center, and the Charitable Foundation all trace back to the same source of funding. We don't have enough evidence yet, but we're close. I took it. Aren't you afraid of getting dragged into this? She closed the car door. I am, so you'd better not die. I smiled. It was the first time in days that I had genuinely felt like laughing. Chen Bei drove. He remained silent the whole way. When we were nearing the nursing home, he suddenly said, don't go too far ahead later. I looked at the back of his head. Are you worried about me? He did not answer. When we arrived, Nurse Lin was being led toward a car by 2 men. She was in her 50s. Her hair was loose, and she held a cloth bundle tightly in her arms. I opened the door and got out. Nurse Lin, the moment she saw me, her eyes lit up, then fear replaced it. The 2 men stepped forward to block me. President Shen, Madam, has arranged for her transfer. Please don't make things difficult for us. I glanced at the name tags on their chests. Which department? Neither answered. I took out my phone and photographed them. Kidnapping, unlawful detention, or impersonating Shen Corporation employees. Pick one. One of them reached out to grab my phone. Chen Bei moved. He caught the man's wrist and twisted it back. A sharp crack sounded. The other man turned to run, but Shenbei kicked him against the car door. Nurse Lin trembled with fear. I walked up to her. Shen Yanxi woke up half a year ago, didn't he? She clutched the cloth bundle. I don't know. I don't know anything. He was given another sedative yesterday. If this continues, he may never wake up properly. Nurse Lin's lips shook. Tears fell. She took a voice recorder from the cloth bundle. Young Master Shen regained partial consciousness half a year ago. He could blink and tap the bed. Director Shu told us to increase the dosage and said it was Madam's instruction. She pushed the recorder into my hands. I recorded it secretly. Later, they found out and transferred me. I didn't dare call the police. My son still works at Shen Hospital. I held the recorder. It was very light, but it felt like a burning piece of iron. Chenbei tied the two men to the side of the car and walked over. Let's go. I looked at him. You didn't look like someone the Shen family sent to watch me. He opened the car door for me. I never was. After that, he fell silent again. I did not press him. It was not time yet. They moved faster than I expected. The next morning, news broke that Shen Yanxi's condition had suddenly worsened. Xu Linchuan faced the media and said the patient had just regained consciousness, was emotionally unstable, and had likely been triggered by outside stimulation. At noon, Zhao Jingming played surveillance footage during the board meeting. In the video, I entered Shen Yanxi's ward. Late at night, Shen Yanxi grabbed my hand. Then the footage cut away. Shen Huizhang sat beside the head of the table with a grave expression. I don't want to say this too harshly, but the facts are clear. He looked at me. You were afraid the true young master would wake up and take back everything you have. So you contacted the patient without authorization and caused his condition to worsen. Murmurs spread through the room. The way some people looked at me changed. Yesterday, the internet was calling me an imposter. Today, people were already saying I had tried to kill Shen Yanxi. Zhao Jingming pushed a statement across the table. President Shen, as long as you admit you entered the ward without authorization and agree to cooperate with the group's investigation, there is still room to resolve this. I picked up the statement. It was brilliantly written. Admit unauthorized contact. Admit that the contact caused negative consequences. Agree to assume relevant responsibility. The moment I signed, I would become the primary scapegoat for the attempt to harm Shen Yanxi. I looked up at Zhao Jingming. Who wrote this? He adjusted his glasses. The legal department. Well written. I tore it in half. Shen Huizhang's face darkened. Jiang Yi, don't push your luck. The room fell silent. He had called me by my real name. I looked at him. Since vice chairman, Shen enjoys stating facts. Why not state them all? I connected my laptop to the screen. I did enter the ward. The time was 11:24 p.m. Xu Linchuan frowned. So you admit it. But Shen Yanxi's condition worsened at 1:17 a.m. I displayed the medication chart. During that period, Director Xu gave him 2 sedative injections and 1 antipsychotic drug. Xu Linchuan's face paled. That was a medical procedure. Then release the complete medication record. I looked at him. Also, why did you tell the public yesterday that he had only just regained consciousness? According to Nurse Lin's recording, he was already able to respond by tapping half a year ago. I pressed play. Nurse Lin's voice echoed through the conference room. Young Master Shen tapped 3 times again today. Director Xu said not to record it. Madam ordered us to restrict visits. After the dosage was increased, his periods of awareness became shorter and shorter. The room erupted into chaos. Shen Huizhang slammed his fist on the table. We don't even know whether that recording is real. Qin Jiao, turn off the screen. Qin Jiao sat at the finance table without moving. Vice Chairman Shen, I also found irregular fund flows at the convalescent center over the past 3 years. She looked up. Should I turn those off too? Shen Huizhang stared at her. His eyes were murderous. I knew this was not enough. This could tear open a small crack, but it could not bring the whole structure down. As expected, Meng Qinglan soon stood. Her face was calm. The meeting is adjourned. All materials will be submitted to a third party for verification. Then, she looked at me. "C, you look tired. Go home and rest." She called me a CI again, but this time, the name only chilled me. The shareholders' meeting was moved up. At 10 that night, Meng Qinglan told me to return to the Shen residence. When I entered, she was sitting in the living room. 2 documents lay on the table: a liability acknowledgement agreement, a shareholders' meeting agenda. She did not invite me to sit. At tomorrow's meeting, Huizhang will reveal your identity. I stood still. She continued. You will sign the liability agreement. You will take full responsibility for the Blue Bay project, the convalescent center's mismanagement, and the irregularities in the charitable foundation's accounts. The group will tell the public you made errors in judgment because of excessive pressure. I smiled. I'm just a fake young master. Do I really have that much power? People will believe it. And then, I'll take care of the orphanage. I'll make sure you don't go to prison. Once everything settles, I'll send you overseas. I looked at her. What if I refuse? Only then did she raise her eyes. Then you impersonated the Shen family's heir. You are suspected of fraud, embezzlement, and attempting to harm the true heir. The orphanage's funding will be frozen, and Dean Han will be implicated as well. Her tone was so calm, as if she were arranging dinner. I picked up the liability agreement. It had Zhao Jingming's style. Beautiful, precise, clean, enough to nail me down. I asked, in these 6 years, did you ever treat me as family, even for a moment? Meng Qinglan did not speak. I stared at her. It was a stupid question. I knew it, but I still wanted to ask. She set down her teacup. I did not raise you so you could ask me such childish questions. The living room was quiet. I could hear my own heartbeat. One beat, then another. Strangely, once she said it, I stopped feeling sad. It was as if the sword hanging above my head for 6 years had finally fallen. It hurt, but there was no longer anything to fear. I put the agreement back on the table. See you tomorrow. Meng Qinglan frowned. Zhang Yi. I stopped. She said, you are no match for the Shen family. I turned back. I never intended to fight the Shen family. Her eyes flickered. I smiled. I'm only fighting all of you. When I stepped outside, Chen Bei was standing by the car. The rain had stopped. The air was cold. He handed me an old tin box. The things from locker. No. 17, at Blue Harbor. I looked at him. You went there before old Master Shen passed away. He told me to keep watch. The box was not large, but it was heavy. On the lid was the personal seal old Master Shen had often used. I did not take it immediately. Whose side are you on? Chen Bei said. Old Master Shen's. Why give it to me now? Old Master said, I should only give it to you when you no longer wanted to be Shenyansi. My fingers stiffened. The edge of the tin box was cold. I opened it. Inside were a voice recorder, an addendum to a will, and a letter. 4 words were written on the envelope. For Mr. Jiang, not Shen Yanxi, Zhang Yi. I opened it. Old Master Shen's handwriting was bold and firm. I do not know whether they brought you into the Shen family to save you or to harm you, but the day you walked through the door, I knew you were not Yanxi. I did not expose you because the Shen family needed someone to hold it together, and because I saw in your eyes a desire to live. Do not think of yourself as someone else's shadow. If one day, Yanxi wakes up, and someone in the Shen family tries to make you take the blame for them, open this box. What I leave you is not the status of a Shen family member. It is a bargaining chip that allows you to stand upright and speak as Zhang Yi. I read the letter for a long time. The words on the paper blurred. The rain had clearly stopped, yet it felt as if another layer of water had gathered in my eyes. Chen Bei said. Old Master also left a recording. In it, he stated his suspicions about Shen Huizhang's abnormal financial transactions. There is also a copy of an independent trust agreement. I closed the box. Why are you helping me? Chen Bei thought for a moment. When you first entered the Shen family at 17, Old Master made you kneel in the ancestral hall. You knelt until midnight. Even after you developed a fever, you never begged for mercy. I said nothing. He continued. Old Master said, that boy has a backbone. Don't let them break it. I smiled. He scolded me for 6 years. Yes. Chen Bei opened the car door for me. He did scold people harshly. I got into the car. My phone vibrated. Qin Jiao had sent a message. The audit chain is complete. Then, another. The scheduled emails are set. Unless someone cancels them, all materials will be sent automatically to regulators and 13 media outlets at 9:40 tomorrow morning. I replied with one word. Good. My face reflected in the car window. It still looked like Shen Yanxi's, but perhaps not as much as before. On the day of the shareholders' meeting, Shen Tower was surrounded by media. Flashbulbs were blinding. The moment I got out of the car, reporters surged toward me. President Shen, is it true you are not related to the Shen family by blood? Has the real young master, Shen, regained consciousness? Are you suspected of attempting to harm the rightful heir? Chen Bei stood between me and the crowd. I did not answer. We walked into the venue. The large meeting hall was already full. Shareholders, executives, legal advisors, directors, reporters granted limited access, and several representatives from major financial institutions. Meng Qinglan sat in the front row. Shen Huizhang sat beside her, face solemn. Zhao Jingming stood near the projection screen with a stack of documents. The moment I entered, the room quieted. Every gaze landed on me. For 6 years, this was the gaze I had been most familiar with. Expectation, scrutiny, fear, respect, and now, suspicion. Shen Huizhang stood first. Since everyone is here, I will not waste time. He looked directly at me. For 6 years, Shen Corporation has been managed by a man who is not Shen Yanxi. A wave of noise swept across the hall, even though the news had already spread online. Hearing it from Shen Huizhang himself still sent the crowd into an uproar. He lifted his hand and pointed at me. His real name is Zhang Yi. He came from Linhai Welfare Home. 6 years ago, he was selected because of his resemblance to my nephew, Shen Yanxi, and was placed in the Shen family under a false identity. The screen lit up. My orphanage file appeared. My photo at 17. The evaluation document. The name change materials. The room exploded. Shen Huijiang lowered his voice. During these 6 years, he signed contracts, handled company assets, and made major decisions under a false identity. The Blue Bay Project, the Convalescent Center, and the Charitable Foundation's accounts all passed through his hands. Then Zhao Jingming spoke. The legal department recommends immediately suspending Zhang Yi from all positions and launching a full accountability investigation. He turned to me. Mr. Zhang, do you have anything to say? Mr. Zhang. The title made some people laugh. I looked at the screen. The photo of 17-year-old me was still there. Thin, guarded, and dirty-eyed. I suddenly felt that the boy in the photo looked very far away. I raised my eyes. Yes. I picked up the microphone. My name is Zhang Yi. The noise lowered a little. I said, I did live as Shen Yanxi for 6 years. The hall went completely silent. Shen Huijiang's eyes flashed with satisfaction. Meng Qinglan looked at me without expression. I continued, but the person who chose me, trained me, altered my identity records, and announced to the public that Shen Yanxi had recovered was not me. The screen behind me changed. The sponsorship evaluation file appeared. The 3 signatures at the bottom were enlarged. Meng Qinglan, Zhao Jingming, Gi Yu Chengyi. I looked at Zhao Jingming. Director Zhao, this is your signature, isn't it? Zhao Jingming's expression changed slightly. This document's authenticity has not been verified. That's fine. I pressed the remote. A second file appeared. It was Old Master Shen's addendum to his will. In this addendum, Old Master Shen stated clearly that he knew I was not Shen Yanxi. He also wrote that I was placed in the Shen family under the arrangement of Meng Qinglan and others. The hall stirred again. Shen Huijiang stood abruptly. Forgery. This is clearly forged. A lawyer beside Qin Jiao rose and said, the will addendum has already been notarized and sealed. We have submitted copies to the regulatory authority this morning. Shen Huijiang's face froze. At that moment, the doors of the hall opened. 2 bodyguards pushed a wheelchair inside. The man in the wheelchair wore a dark coat. His face was pale, but his eyes were cold and clear. Every sound in the room vanished. Someone gasped. Young Master Shen Yanxi, had arrived. Shen Yanxi looked at me. I looked back at him. Over the past 6 years, I had imagined countless times what it would be like when we finally met. He would hate me. He would curse me. He would drive me out. But now, he sat there and spoke for me. Zhang Yi did not harm me. Shen Huijiang's face turned ugly. Yanxi, you just woke up. There are many things you don't understand. Shen Yanxi smiled faintly. Uncle, I was in a vegetative state. I was not dead. He raised his hand. Nurse Lin placed the medical records in front of him. For 6 months, I had intermittent consciousness. His voice was weak, but every word was clear. I could hear people talking. I could feel the injections. I could tap my fingers, blink, and respond. But every time I showed signs of awareness, my medication was increased. He looked toward Xu Linchuan, who was seated near the back. Director Xu, would you like to explain? Xu Linchuan's face drained of color. This is slander. The patient's memory may be confused after long-term unconsciousness. Shen Yanxi gave a soft laugh. I knew you would say that. The screen changed again. This time, it showed a recording from Old Master Shen. His old, hoarse voice filled the hall. Shen Huijiang's accounts are abnormal. Blue Bay, the medical investment line, and the charity foundation have hidden fund channels. If Yanxi does not wake up, Qinglan may try to use Zhang Yi to take responsibility. Preserve all evidence. The audience erupted. Qin Jiao stood. Finance has completed a preliminary audit chain. She projected the fund flow chart. Over the past 3 years, funds from the Shen Family Charitable Foundation were repeatedly transferred through medical procurement, logistics investments, and offshore shell companies before entering Blue Bay construction. Several accounts are connected to companies controlled by Vice Chairman Shen Huijiang shouted, "Nonsense." Qin Jiao continued. At the same time, the Convalescent Center received unusually high management fees, consultation fees, and pharmaceutical procurement payments. Those funds entered accounts controlled by Director Xu Linchuan's relatives. Xu Linchuan stood up so abruptly that his chair scraped against the floor. "You're framing me." Shen Yanxi looked at him calmly, then explained the medication records. The screen displayed the record: dosage increases, missing entries, altered notes, restricted visitation orders, and at the bottom of several internal approvals, Meng Qinglan's signature. Everyone looked at her. Meng Qinglan sat there, still calm. She even straightened her sleeve. "Yancy," she said softly, "you've only just awakened. Don't be used by others." Shen Yancy looked at her. "Mother, half a year ago, when I first tapped the bed, you were standing beside me." Meng Qinglan's fingers stopped. He continued, "You leaned down and told me, sleep a little longer. The Shen family cannot withstand another upheaval right now." The hall was deathly silent. My fingers tightened slowly. So he had heard it. For half a year, he had heard everything. Meng Qinglan finally lifted her eyes. And was I wrong? Her voice was very soft. The Shen family was already unstable. You could not move. Hui Zhang was pushing from the outside. Zhang Yi was still useful. If you woke up at the wrong time, everything would collapse. Shen Yanxi's face was pale. "So, you kept me asleep," Meng Qinglan said. "I kept the Shen family alive." I looked at her. For 6 years, she had said the same thing in different ways. Everything was for the Shen family. My name could be taken. Shen Yanxi's consciousness could be buried. The orphanage could be threatened. A human being could be used, trained, and discarded. All because the Shen family had to survive. Shen Huizhang suddenly laughed. "Even if all of this is true, so what?" He pointed at me. "Zhang Yi is still a fake heir. That is a fact. He entered the Shen family under a false identity, signed documents, and participated in management. He isn't clean either, correct?" I nodded. "I am fake." He paused. I looked at the people in the hall. "So from today onward, I will no longer use the name Shen Yanxi." I removed the Shen family pin from my chest and placed it on the table. "My name is Zhang Yi." The cameras clicked wildly. I continued. "Everything I signed while using Shen Yanxi's name will be submitted for legal review. If I must bear responsibility, I will bear what is mine." I looked at Shen Huizhang. "But I will not bear what belongs to you." Qin Jiao pressed another key. The screen displayed a series of scheduled emails. At 9:40 this morning, all evidence was sent to regulators, the Economic Crime Unit, and 13 media outlets. Shen Huizhang's expression changed completely. "What evidence?" Qin Jiao said. "Complete fund flow records, hidden account ledgers, offshore shell company beneficiaries, internal approvals, medical payment trails, and the original Blue Bay liability transfer agreement, prepared for Zhang Yi." Zhao Jingming's face turned ashen. I looked at him. "Director Zhao, you wrote that agreement very well, clean, precise, and designed to place every crime on me." He backed up half a step. I was only following instructions. Meng Qinglan looked at him. For the first time, her expression cracked. Shen Huizhang shouted, "Following whose instructions? Don't drag me down." The hall became chaotic. Reporters rushed to ask questions. Security tried to hold them back. At that moment, police officers and investigators entered the hall. The leader showed his identification. "We have received reports involving suspected illegal fund transfers, embezzlement, medical malpractice, and falsification of documents. Shen Huizhang, Meng Qinglan, Zhao Jingming, Xu Linchuan, please come with us for investigation." The flashbulbs became a storm. Shen Huizhang struggled violently. "This is a setup. Jiang Yi set me up." I stood where I was. "Yes." He froze. I looked at him calmly. "You taught me that people without power deserve to be stepped on. So I learned." Shen Huizhang's face twisted. "You little bastard." Before he could finish, Chen Bei stepped forward and blocked him. The officers restrained Shen Huizhang and took him away. Zhao Jingming kept repeating, "I can explain. I can explain." Xu Linchuan's legs nearly gave out. Only Meng Qinglan remained composed. When she passed me, she stopped. "Zhang Yi." I looked at her. She seemed to want to say something. In the end, she only smiled faintly. "You really were my best student." I said. "No." Her smile paused. I said, "I learned how to survive by myself." Her expression finally changed. Then, she was taken away. The Economic Crime Unit acted faster than expected. Meng Qinglan did not resist when she was formally detained. Shen Huizhang resisted the most. He cursed everyone. He called me an orphan, a fake, a stray dog raised by the Shen family. Then Chen Bei showed the police the materials from Old Master Shen's tin box. The evidence had existed for years. Old Master Shen had simply been waiting for Shen Yanxi to wake up, or waiting for the day I stopped wanting to be Shen Yanxi. As for Zhao Jingming, he broke down quickly. Lawyers like him knew too well where the line was. Once he realized he had been placed on the wrong side of it, he began pushing responsibility away. Xu Linchuan was no better. Under investigation, the hidden medication, records, altered monitoring data, and abnormal payments from the medical line were all uncovered. Shen Yanxi's worsening condition had never been caused by by me. For half a year, he had been awake in fragments, listening, remembering, enduring. When the police asked him why, the first thing he said to me was run. He looked at me and said, because I knew they would use him as the final scapegoat. I did not know what to say, he added, and because I didn't want to owe him more. That sentence was strange. I had stolen his name for 6 years, yet, he said he did not want to owe me. Later, I understood. During those 6 years, I had held up the Shen family in his place. I had sat through the board battles, signed the contracts, taken the pressure, kneeled in the ancestral hall, learned to live as a shadow. Neither of us had chosen it, but both of us had been trapped inside it. Shen Corporation stock was suspended for 3 days. Every financial outlet in Linhai covered the story. The Shen family's stand-in heir, real young Master Shen, appears at shareholders meeting in wheelchair. Hidden accounts behind Shen family charitable foundation. Who is Zhang Yi? Fewer people cursed me online. Some said I was pitiful. Some said I was calculating. Others asked, he took someone else's place for 6 years. Why should he get sympathy? I read those comments without much feeling. They were not completely wrong. The truth had never been clean. I was not an innocent child who knew nothing. At 17, I did not fully understand the game. But later, I did. And once I understood, I still stayed. Because the Shen family's cage was still a place where I could study, eat well, wear clean clothes, and stand in rooms I had never been allowed to enter before. I hated the chain, but I had also depended on it. That was the ugliest part. A few days later, Shen Yanxi asked to see me. He was still in the convalescent center, but the medical team had been replaced. When I entered, he was sitting by the window. His face was pale, and a blanket covered his knees. He looked at me. You look worse than I do. I sat down. You've been asleep for 6 years. You don't have much right to criticize. He smiled faintly. Then he became quiet. After a long moment, he said, thank you. I looked at him. For what? For keeping the Shen family standing. I said, I didn't do it for you. I know. He looked out the window. You did it to survive. I said nothing. He continued, I don't hate you. That surprised me. He turned back. I hated the situation. I hated that my name was used. I hated that everyone made decisions around my body while I couldn't move. His voice was calm, but I heard enough to know you were also used. I lowered my eyes. You lost 6 years. So did you. The room went quiet. After a while, he said, the board wants me to return as chairman. After recovery, I looked at him. Can you? Not alone. I understood. He looked at me. The Shen family still needs someone who knows its current operations. You know them better than anyone. I laughed. You want me to go back? As Zhang Yi. My smile slowly faded. He said, not as my shadow, not as my substitute, as Zhang Yi. I did not answer immediately. For 6 years, I had dreamed of the day I could leave, but when that day finally came, I realized leaving was not the same as being free. Freedom was not hiding from the past. Freedom was being able to stand in front of it without lowering my head. I said, I won't be Shen Yanxi again. He nodded. I know. And I won't clean up the Shen family's mess for free. A faint smile appeared in his eyes. Qin Jiao already prepared your compensation package. I looked at him. You two planned this? He looked away. She said if I didn't pay, you would probably walk out. I stood. Then tell Vice President Qin to make the number more sincere. Shen Yanxi laughed softly. It was weak, but real. Half a month later, I returned to the orphanage. The gate had been repainted. Dean Han stood in the courtyard, watching the children play ball. When she saw me, she seemed a little awkward. Shen, she stopped herself. Xiao Yi, I nodded. Her eyes reddened. People from the foundation came by. They said the funding won't be cut off again. There is also a new special fund. I followed her gaze. A new sign had been hung on the wall. Jiang Yi Education and Medical Assistance Fund. I looked at those 2 words. Jiang Yi. When I was young, I hated my name. Jia, like a river without a shore. Yi, like wild grass by the roadside. Even if people stepped on it, no one would look down. But now, looking at those 2 characters on the wall, I suddenly felt it was not so bad. Wild grass was still alive. Wild things were difficult to kill. Dean Han walked over. I'm sorry. You've said that before. Then, have you forgiven me? I thought about it. No. She froze. I turned to look at her, but I will continue running the fund. The children did nothing wrong. Dean Han began to cry. I did not comfort her. Some things could not be resolved with a single apology, and saying, it's fine did not make me generous. I was not that generous. I had only finally reached a place where I could pave the road I once wished someone had built for me. Before I left, a little boy ran over. He looked up at me. Uncle, they said this fund is named after you. I looked down. Yes. Are you rich? I smiled. Rich enough. Did you live here before too? I did. His eyes brightened. Then, how did you get out? I thought for a moment. Someone took me away. He looked envious. That's great. I said nothing. Was it great? Not entirely, but I still crouched and tied his loose shoelace. From now on, you won't have to wait for someone to take you away. He blinked. I said. The road will be built. You'll be able to walk out by yourself. The Shen family restructuring meeting was scheduled for 3 in the afternoon. When I returned to the company, reporters were still gathered downstairs. The moment they saw me, they surrounded me. Mr. Zhang, will you continue serving in Shen Corporation's management? What is your current relationship with Mr. Shen Yanxi? Do you consider yourself a victim? Chen Bei pushed through the crowd ahead of me. I walked to the entrance and suddenly stopped. Whenever I came here before, everyone called me President Shen. At the front desk, the young receptionist stood up nervously. Mr. Zhang, Mr. Zhang. The title still sounded unfamiliar. I glanced at her. Is the conference room ready? She nodded at once. Yes, Mr. Jiang. I walked toward the elevator. Just before the doors closed, I saw my reflection in the glass wall. The same face, still similar to Shen Yanxi, but today, I was not wearing the dark gray suit Shen Yanxi used to favor. I was not wearing the cufflinks custom made by the Shen family, and I had not pinned the Shen family crest to my chest. I was only Jiang Yi. The elevator rose to the top floor. The conference room door was open. Qin Jiao had already arrived. A thick audit report lay on the table. Shen Yanxi was there too. He sat in a wheelchair, a coat over his shoulders, his face still pale. When he saw me, he nodded slightly. 3 minutes late, I sat down beside him. There were a lot of reporters on the road. Excuses. I picked up the document. Young Master Shen, may be in poor health, but your tongue seems perfectly sharp. He smiled. Mr. Zhang, let's start. Mr. Jiang. I turned to the first page. Outside the window lay Linhai City, skyscrapers, traffic, and the gray-blue sea. The city was still noisy. The Shen family was still a mess. The overseas funds had not yet been fully recovered. The Blue Bay project still had to be cleaned up. The charitable foundation needed to be rebuilt. The convalescent center would receive an entirely new management team. There were many problems left, but I suddenly realized they were not so frightening after all. I picked up my pen. The signature line was blank. This time, I did not write Shen Yanxi. I wrote my own name, Jiang Yi. The pen tip touched the paper, steady and firm, as if, after 6 long years, I had finally signed myself back into existence.